Welcome everybody. In this short video we're gonna verify two more differentiation formulas. The one on the left says that derivative of tangent is equal to 1 over cosine squared, or simply put secant squared. And the one on the right says that derivative of cotangent is negative 1 over sine squared, or simply put negative cosecant squared of x. And we're going to work through the details as to why those formulas are true. When we work on the derivative of tangent, we can go ahead and use the identity that tangent x is equal to sine x over cosine x, and apply quotient rule to that identity. So that way, derivative of tangent x is going to be derivative of the quotient sine x over cosine x. And according to quotient rule, we're going to have derivative of top times the bottom. So I get derivative of sine times cosine, minus top times derivative of bottom. So it's minus sine times derivative of cosine. All of that over bottom squared. So we have cosine x squared. That's the setup. Now we can go ahead and evaluate those derivatives. So we know derivative of sine is equal to cosine, and derivative of cosine is equal to negative sine. Okay, so thus to the top left term becomes cosine x times cosine x. The top right term, we already had negative sine x, and then derivative of cosine gives us another negative sine x. So we're going to have negative sine times negative sine. Then downstairs we have cosine squared. So this cosine squared x is a shorthand way of writing cosine x squared. The square of cosine x, rather. So now we can simplify this a bit more. Cosine times cosine gives us cosine squared. Negative times negative gives us positive. Sine times sine gives us sine squared. Okay, so we have cosine squared plus sine squared, all of that over cosine squared. And the better way to state it is to notice that cosine squared plus sine squared is equal to 1 by the trig identity. So all of this becomes 1 over cosine squared x. That's one of the forms of the answer. And then 1 over cosine is the same as secant. So this is right away the same as secant squared x. That's this formula. And then with tangent we have a similar idea. We use identity that cotangent is equal to cosine x over sine x. And if we use quotient rule, we're going to get the derivative of cotangent. So set it up as derivative of cotangent is equal to derivative of cosine over sine. And according to quotient rule, we're going to do derivative of top times the bottom minus top times derivative of bottom. All of that over bottom squared. And again, we use that derivative of cosine is negative sine. Okay, we get negative sine times sine. And then in here we use that derivative of sine is cosine. So we get negative cosine times cosine. Excellent. In denominator, we still have sine squared. Okay, so now to simplify this, we're going to factor out negative. And observe that sine times sine is sine squared, cosine times cosine is cosine squared. So we get negative sine squared x, a negative of the expression, sine squared x plus cosine squared x. And that simplifies to be 1. So we get negative 1 over sine squared x. That's one version of the answer. Or simply put, since 1 over sine x is cosecant x, so we right away have negative cosecant squared x for the derivative of cotangent.